What's going on, everybody? My name is Tenebris Infinite, and we just got Generation Zero's first update of 2020. This is a massive update with tons of bug fixes, tons of crashes getting squashed, and a couple interesting new gameplay features getting introduced as well. There really isn't too much in terms of new content, as this update is solely focused on bug fixing, but I do think that a number of the things that were introduced in this update will have some pretty big implications moving forwards. So we're just going to jump right into things, start reading through these patch notes, I'll weigh in with my opinions, and then we'll talk about something that I found out that was not included in the patch notes. So the patch notes read as follows. Hope everyone is enjoying 2020 so far. A big thanks to everyone who is providing feedback over the holiday period. We learned a lot and found several bugs with your help. All of this will help us continue to make the game even better. January has finally kicked into full gear, and we are back in business with another update. Although this month is light on content, we wanted to make sure we got some bug fixes out to you, especially as some of them were quite annoying and things that we had flagged for them. Additionally, we've taken a balance pass on rivals dropping experimental weapons. We've seen both from our data and what everyone is saying that we needed to tweak the drop mechanics to be more in line with the rarity and power that experimental weapons are meant to portray. To that end, we made three notable changes. For the first one, they reduced the chance of rivals being generated by machines killing players and increased the chance for players killing machines in a region. For the second, the experimental weapons drop chance should now be correctly tied to the rival level and machine type. The lowest chance is now a level 1 prototype class hunter, and the highest is a level 4 apocalypse class tank. And for the third change, they restricted experimental weapons to only drop to players who are level 25 and above. So primarily we saw that experimental weapons were dropping too often, even at lower levels, and it was creating an experience where players would get the best weapons very early on, and it would make the game too easy. We want players to still have a chance at getting them and using them, but not so early on that it damages the experience. To be clear though, if you are below level 25 and have an experimental weapon, you will still be able to use it. Please let us know your feedback about how these changes feel once you start fighting rivals after the patch. So that's a pretty big change to rivals, and one that I think is actually duly welcome. So I've heard from tons of players that they've managed to get the experimental PvG right off the bat on the first island and have been able to basically steamroll their way through the whole game. So I think that it's really good that the experimental weapons are now locked behind a level requirement, and also that the chances for getting an experimental weapon require taking on more difficult enemies, because currently as it was standing, it was just far too easy to get the 6-star weapons, and it kind of made the 5-star weapons completely irrelevant to newer players at least. And then a change that I think is an excellent change is them reducing the chance of rivals being generated from machines killing players, because that just encouraged some really negative gameplay loops where you would be going off to a machine, getting killed by that machine in hopes that it would become a rival so that way you could get an experimental weapon. Now you'll have to actually go out and work to get the experimental weapons, which I think just benefits Generation Zero as a whole. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on this change in particular in the comments down below, because it's a pretty massive change to the whole Rivals format. As well, you guys could be damn sure that I'm going to be coming out with a new Rivals farming guide within the next week or so. I'm going to be taking the time to really experiment with the new format and figure out all of the little quirks and ways you can do things quickly and efficiently. So definitely look forward to a video on that from me. But before we get into the patch notes proper, the letter actually goes on to include something else that I think is excellent that the developers are doing for us. So it reads as follows, saying, "But before we get to the bug fixes, a quick note that we'll be rerunning our holiday event from today until Monday, February 3rd. We had a lot of new players come in during the holidays that may have missed out, so consider this your last chance and be sure to not miss out." And I think that this is great because alongside the fact that we got tons of new players over the holiday season, also there was this kind of crummy little crash glitch that was happening with Rivals. So if anybody was experiencing that crash glitch, they'll now be able to do the holiday event properly and will be able to gather up the holiday clothes themselves. Alright, so with all of that out of the way, now we can finally start getting to the bug fixes. And as per usual, this is a massive list of things being fixed. So I'm going to read through it pretty quickly and just weigh in on a couple things. But definitely, as always, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions on all of these fixes in the comments down below. So first off, for weapons, they fixed an issue where you couldn't reload immediately after exiting a bicycle. This is sick because it's something that I actually reported on the forums. A bunch of other people did too, but I took the time to actually put together a video for the developers to watch as well, just kind of showing the glitch in action. So it's super sick seeing that actually get fixed. Next up, they fixed an issue where it was possible to attach any ammo or attachment to any weapon. And again, I think that it's great that this is fixed because that was a serious exploit in the game for a long time. So it's great seeing that finally get fixed. They fixed an issue with ADS with the 12 gauge pump action that resulted in a black bar appearing on the screen when wearing the worn flannel jacket or the elegant tailcoat. They tweaked the way in which flame damage was applied to machines. So this is an interesting one, and I think it might potentially spell out being a nerf to the experimental AG4, but I'm going to have to really test that out to see what's going on there. They fixed a rare issue where weapon switching with only one main weapon equipped could unequip the weapon. They fixed an issue where player hair could appear distorted when looking through a scope, and they fixed an issue where thrown items would sometimes disappear in midair. For the UI, for a community report, they fixed an issue where sometimes machine components would remain highlighted after leaving tech view. For another community report, they fixed an issue where the counter for adrenaline shots could become a negative and actually underflow. For another community report, they fixed an issue with the storage box incorrectly counting the number of attachments on a weapon against the item space available. And for the last community report here, they toned down the HUD filter from the gas mask. So next up, they've removed the gas mask HUD filter when seeing your character in third person, while emoting or on a bike. They've added tooltips on how to cycle views when using a vision module. They've fixed an issue where stats may not show up on apparel when cycling through variations. They fixed an issue where the bike icon could get stuck on the map and in-world if you tried to spawn a bike multiple times. They've fixed an issue where both challenge tree tabs were highlighted when switching between the menus. They fixed an issue where a rival nameplate would disappear if something blocked your line of sight. They fixed an issue with the scroll bar behavior in the collectibles menu. They fixed issues with interaction prompts throughout the world. They've updated controller mappings to indicate what button was reload. They fixed an issue where the controls option appeared twice in the settings menu. And they fixed an issue where your screen could go mostly white if you used a medkit while being hit by a flamethrower. I hope that this is applied to the biochemical attack from the runners as well. And then lastly here, they fixed an issue where the damage over time effect would not scale appropriately to your field of view setting. So now for the mission fixes. The first community report here, they fixed an issue where the Minkin bunker mission could not be completed from the warboard. For the next community report, they fixed an issue where the Skvarden warboard mission would become blocked if items were picked up in the wrong order. Now next up for a couple general fixes that they've made, they fixed some issues with mission objective counters not properly syncing when going from multiplayer to single player, resulting in blocked missions. They updated missions to autocomplete from your log if all required mission objectives have been achieved instead of being just stuck in your log. They fixed an issue where flying objects in the road to Saltham would not be completed after finishing all the objectives. They fixed an issue where players' broken missions would not be properly fixed if they immediately joined another player's multiplayer session after an update instead of starting their own session first. They fixed an issue where Beyond the Barricade could get blocked for the host if a client picked up a mission item in the host's game. They fixed an issue where if a player left the game during the Resistance while in multiplayer and then started the game in single player, the mission would disappear from their log. And they cleaned up some erroneous POIs in a few missions. So for challenges, there's just one fix here, where they fixed an issue where challenge progression could be carried over to a new character after deleting all previous old characters. And now for some character fixes. They fixed an issue where from another player's perspective, a player would still use the holding animation after a flare had been held for the maximum amount of time, but had already been thrown. They fixed an issue where the jog animations may not play after sprinting, then running out of stamina. They fixed an issue where sometimes your weapon would stay in your hands while emoting. They fixed an issue where players could infinitely revive themselves without any adrenaline shots. They fixed issues around getting stuck on a bicycle and attempting to dismount. They cleaned up several reload animations that were acting glitchy. And they fixed an issue where NPCs would not respond to the power outage during the Fight the Cold mission. Now for machines. They fixed an issue where machines would continually attack a player's last known position when downed. They fixed an issue where tanks would attempt to fire their missiles at a player when that player was well outside of the tank's weapon range. They fixed an issue where a single destroyed tick would sometimes count as multiple when playing in multiplayer. They fixed an issue where in specific circumstances, machines attacking the hotel would not deal damage. They fixed a few issues with how the Apocalypse class hunter's flamethrower would look from certain angles. They fixed an issue where tank cluster mines were not detonating for client players in multiplayer. And then they fixed an issue where tank cluster mines would sometimes materialize out of thin air. So now for some world fixes. A community report, they fixed an issue where dead and alive machines could disappear when looking away from them and then looking back, which is excellent because a lot of people were missing out on some pretty sweet loot due to that bug. For another community bug, they fixed an issue where ticks would sometimes spawn outside of a house instead of inside. They've been working on that all along, and hopefully they're starting to get to the end of tick placement. For another community report, they fixed an issue where players would not automatically respawn when falling into a lake near the military compound and Angerus Church. For another community report, they fixed an issue where KVM-89 squad automatic weapon ammo was not dropping in Ostertorn on the main island. And for another community report, they fixed an issue where players had trouble picking up the weapon in a small storage room at the Savarad radar mast. Then they fixed plenty of issues regarding floating objects, clipping objects, or inconsistent collision. They fixed issues regarding players accessing or unlocking safe houses in single player after having entered them but not unlocked them in multiplayer. They fixed an issue where swings could sometimes act as if they're possessed, which I'm kind of sad to see that go. But then they fixed an issue where televisions would still be on after the power went out in the hotel. They fixed several instances of loot containers that were unable to be looted. They fixed an issue where it was possible to continually respawn a relay beacon on Himfall, which means that for my 5-star LMG farming video, you guys can now just disregard the initial section where I talk about that respawning relay beacon. And then for the final fix here, they fixed a few instances of machine spawning and getting stuck inside of buildings. Okay, so now for localization, voiceover, and audio. For the first community report, they fixed an issue where the air raid siren could end up constantly playing. And for the next community report, they've added translations for the overdrive firing mode on the experimental Capist. They've also updated various collectibles and mission items to either include or remove text based on their description. They fixed a few issues with subtle text disappearing too quickly or staying too long on the screen. They fixed an issue with inconsistency between run and sprint in the settings menus. They fixed an issue where the tutorial flow on PC would mention the left stick while using a mouse and keyboard. They fixed several punctuation issues. They fixed an issue where several audio logs would show a giant block of text when using subtitles instead of pacing the text out. They fixed an issue with the player heartbeat from sprinting still playing when emoting or getting onto a bicycle. They fixed an issue where the overdrive sound effects from the experimental Capist ended too early in multiplayer. They fixed an issue where VO may not be heard during the Ghosts of the Past mission. They fixed an issue with VO and subtitles overlapping the credits during the Behind the Curtain mission. They fixed an issue where sometimes audio log VO would reverberate while playing in a bunker. They fixed an issue where player footsteps wouldn't play while reloading. And for the final set of fixes here, the crashes, the first one being a community report, they fixed an issue where players could crash when retrieving the experimental clock from their storage box. They fixed an issue where players would be stuck on the login screen after crashing, and then they've had various other crash fixes. So there we go, an absolute mountain of bug fixes and just general fixes, and honestly, in my own personal opinion, I feel like this is the smoothest that Generation Zero has run so far, at least on PlayStation 4. I know that there's a couple issues on PC still kind of floating around, but I'm pretty sure that the console versions are good to go. And one of the cool things about this update is how much of that was actually community reported issues. It's just, again, just a sign that the dev team is out there, hearing us out, listening to us, and caring about what we care about as well. So hats off to them for having such incredible community collaboration in the effort to make Generation Zero as good as it can be. So now for that thing that I was talking about that is an actual game changer here in Generation Zero. We are now able to reload our guns while sprinting. This is something that the community has actually requested for quite a while too, so again, just showing that the devs are out there hearing us out and listening to us. But honestly, I think that this is a huge change because earlier, if you reloaded while you were trying to avoid any sort of incoming fire from machines, you would get absolutely wrecked for it. So now we can reload and sprint and run all around and use dodging tactics while reloading our guns, and I think that that is an absolutely sick change. So there you guys go. There are all of the patch notes, and there might even be some hidden changes. You never know when it comes to Generation Zero, so I'll definitely be looking all across the map to see if there's anything that was hidden away, or if there's anything new that was added or anything like that. But definitely look forward to that new Rivals video. And thank you so much for watching this video. You guys are absolutely awesome, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.